Christmas Eve at the estate. My stepmother slapped me in the dark behind the kitchen, where she thought the cameras could not see. My billionaire grandfather paused the dinner, demanding they play Auxiliary Kitchen Channel at 2:17. The screen flickered as the room held its breath. When the image appeared, the family power structure inverted, and I went from the sacrificial pawn to the player holding the decisive piece. My name is Andrea Brooks. I am 32 years old, and I build things that last. I am the lead project manager at Forge Point Atelier back in Ridgeview. We are not just designers. We are the ones who execute. We take architectural dreams, complex steel staircases, custom cantilevered structures, entire commercial restorations, and make them physically manifest. My days are spent coordinating structural engineers, specialized artisans, and construction crews. I speak the language of load-bearing walls, cured concrete, and hardwood tolerances. I live by blueprints and budgets. My boots are usually covered in sawdust or concrete dust. It is precise, demanding work, and I'm exceptionally good at it. But here, at Northwood Villa, none of that matters. Here, I am not Andrea Brooks, the project manager. I am just Andrea, the complication. Northwood is my grandfather's estate. Lucian Brooks. He is the patriarch in the truest, most intimidating sense of the word. The man who built the Aurora Trust from nothing into an empire. The air in his home is different. Thinner, heavier, smelling of old money, beeswax, and unspoken expectations. My father, Graham, is here. He is a good man, gentle to a fault, currently mesmerized by the oversized Norwegian spruce in the Grand Hall. His mildness is a buffer in this family, but it is also a vulnerability. He is the reason I am walking into this ambush. And then there is Selena. Selena is my stepmother. She married my father many years ago, when I was in college, and slid into our lives with the silent efficiency of a climbing vine, beautiful and suffocating. She produces nothing, yet she controls everything, or at least, she controls my father. Selena despises my work. She cannot comprehend why anyone, especially a Brooks, would choose a life filled with wood dust and timelines. She often refers to Forge Point Atelier, a multi-million-dollar design-build firm. As my cute little workshop, the condescension drips from her, thick as varnish. To her, value is not created, it is inherited or married into. My hands-on career is a personal affront to her worldview. She prefers her own daughter, my half-sister Mira, who focuses on being a public face, which seems to involve mostly lunches and optimized social media. This Christmas Eve gathering was mandatory. The entire extended family has converged on Northwood Villa. The rumor, circulating in hushed tones over champagne flutes, is that Grandfather Lucian intends to adjust the will. The Aurora Trust is not just money, it is control, legacy, and with Lucian advancing in years, the succession question has become the silent scream in every room. The atmosphere is suffocating. It is luxury as armor. The dark, polished mahogany walls seem to be holding their breath, reflecting the strained smiles of cousins and aunts. Every conversation is a calculation, every pleasantry a probe. I came here prepared for a different battle. For the past 18 months, I have been quietly hemorrhaging money into my father's home. Not this opulent estate, but the modest house he shares with Selena. It started with the roof, a leak that Selena had ignored until the trusses were threatening to rot. Then it was the plumbing, a cascade of failing cast-iron pipes. Then the HVAC system died in the middle of winter. Finally, the kitchen, which Selena insisted needed a full remodel to fix the plumbing issues, which of course involved imported marble and high-end appliances. My father, bless him, looks so stressed. Selena handles their finances. She claimed they were asset-rich but cash-poor and could not possibly manage the repairs. So I did. I managed it the only way I know how, as a project. I brought in my own crews from Forge Point, working weekends, getting materials at cost. I paid the invoices myself, documenting every hour of labor, every linear foot of copper pipe, every bundle of shingles, every cabinet. The total is now just over $60,000. There was no loan agreement, no contract. He is my father. This is family. I told myself that. Even as I transferred the funds, I believed it. Selena assured me it was a temporary bridge until one of their investments matured. The check never came. When I gently inquired last month, Selena laughed, suggesting it was a lovely gift. Family does not keep receipts, Andrea, she had chimed. I am not naive. In the zipped compartment of my overnight bag, my tablet is fully charged. It contains a locked folder. Inside that folder is every invoice, every bank transfer confirmation, every before and after photo of the worksite, and a detailed cost analysis spreadsheet that breaks down the $60,000 to the penny. I brought it for self-defense. I thought, if the will was being discussed, I needed to ensure my gift was not misinterpreted as me having already received an advance on my inheritance. I needed to protect my father's dignity and my own integrity. I was wrong about the nature of the threat. It happened just before the first guests arrived for the main reception. I was walking down the west corridor toward the library, checking the fit of the uncomfortable silk dress Selena had insisted I wear. Their voices drifted from the alcove by the fireplace. Selena and her cousin, Paige, they were speaking low, but the acoustics in Northwood carry. It is all handled, Selena murmured, the sound sharp as breaking glass. Lucian is making the adjustments tonight. Are you certain? Paige asked. I made the necessity clear, Selena said, her voice dropping, hardening. After tonight, she will be pushed out, completely. Graham will not object once it is done. My stomach turned to ice. They were not talking about the $60,000. They were talking about me. They were planning to erase me from the family legacy, the repairs, the money I spent. It was not just an oversight. It was leverage they intended to use against me, or perhaps simply a theft they assumed I was too weak to fight. I gripped the smooth, cold wall. I composed myself, smoothed my dress, and walked into the grand hall as if I had heard nothing. Grandfather Lucian was there, standing by the fire. He greeted me, his eyes sharp and assessing. His warmth is genuine, but it is a distant, controlled warmth. He looked at me, then at Selena, then at Mira, like a scientist observing a complex experiment of his own design. He knew there was tension. I suspect he thrives on it. He believes pressure reveals character. My half-sister, Mira, drifted over. She smiled, a perfect, polished smile that never reached her eyes. Andrea, that dress is brave. Hello, Mira, I replied, keeping my voice level. Our relationship is a mirror of Selena's creation. On the surface, polite half-sisters. Beneath, a frigid distance. Selena has spent years whispering in Mira's ear, painting me as the ambitious, cold competitor, the one who looks down on them, the one obsessed with her dirty job instead of the family. Mira, in turn, has grown into the perfect receptacle for Selena's ambitions, embodying the passive elegance Selena values over my proven competence. I nodded to Mira and moved toward my father. I felt the weight of the tablet in my bag upstairs. The invoices and photos I had prepared seemed suddenly small, like bringing a calculator to a knife fight. Selena was wrong. I was not going to be pushed out. I built things. I understood foundations. And I knew. Looking at the cold, calculating smile she gave me from across the room, that the foundation of the Brooks family was about to be tested. The heavy mahogany walls were keeping secrets, but so was I. The party was a performance. I navigated the rooms of Northwood, nodding to relatives, accepting compliments on my work from the few who understood what Forge Point Atelier actually did. My father, Graham, was in his element, regaling a small group with a story about his college days. Across the room, I watched Selena. She was the perfect hostess, a vision in dark emerald silk, her laughter timed, her hand resting proprietorially on my grandfather's arm. But her eyes, whenever they settled on me, were cold and flat. The rumor about the will was no longer a rumor. It was a palpable tension, an electrical charge in the air. Selina had been drinking, not enough to slur her words, but enough to lower her threshold for irritation. Her smiles were tighter, her movements sharper. The overheard conversation with Paige, "She will be pushed out," played on a loop in my mind. It was late, just after 2 a.m. The crowd had thinned. The staff was clearing the last of the dessert plates. Selina approached me, her smile a painted-on grimace. "Andrea," she said, her voice a low purr. "The caterers forgot a tray of warmed brandies for the back terrace. The few of us staying over are moving out there. Be a dear and fetch it, will you? It is in the auxiliary kitchen." My father, overhearing, nodded encouragingly. "Good idea. Darling, it is getting chilly." The auxiliary kitchen, the one part of the ground floor not designed for public viewing, it was a cold, functional space of stainless steel and tile, a service corridor that led to the staff entrance and the small, windswept terrace she mentioned. It was also, as she well knew, a notorious blind spot for the estate's main security cameras. This was a deliberate move. She was isolating me. "Of course," I said. My voice was even. I felt my pulse quicken, not with fear, but with a cold, sharp clarity. This was the confrontation she wanted. I walked past the main kitchen, through the swinging door into the service hallway. The fluorescent lights of the corridor hummed. I pushed open the door to the auxiliary kitchen. As I expected, the main lights were off. The room was cast in shadow, lit only by the faint green glow of the industrial refrigerator controls, and the cold moonlight streaming through the high, frosted windows. It smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. The silver tray was on the central steel prep table, holding several snifters. I heard the door click shut behind me. I did not have to turn around. I felt her presence, the shift in the air. "You really should have stayed home. Andrea." Selina's voice came from the darkness by the door. I turned slowly. "Selina?" "Did you think I did not know?" she hissed, stepping out of the shadow. Her face was tight with a rage she no longer bothered to conceal. "Did you think I did not see those pathetic invoices on your father's desk? $60,000. She laughed. A short, ugly sound. "Trying to buy your way into the will? Trying to make me look like I cannot manage my own home?" "It was a leak. Selina, the roof was rotting. I was helping Dad. You were interfering." She crossed the distance between us in 2 quick strides. I stood my ground. "He does not need your help. He has me, and Mira has me." She was close now. I could smell the wine on her breath. "You do not belong here," she whispered. "You are just a reminder of his first, weak mistake. This is Mira's future. The Aurora Trust belongs to her." Her hand shot out and clamped around my left wrist, her fingers digging in like talons. Her nails bit into my skin. "Let go of me." "You will not get a dime," she snarled, her face inches from mine. "I made sure of it tonight. You are out. You are nothing." And then she slapped me. It was not a graze. It was a full-force, open-handed strike. Her heavy rings connected with my cheekbone. The sound of it, a sharp, wet crack, echoed off the steel. The pain was immediate, a blinding, stinging heat that radiated from my cheek to my ear. My eyes watered instantly from the shock, but I did not move. I did not flinch. I work on hazardous job sites. I have had scaffolding drop near me. My instinct is to freeze, assess, and not escalate. I looked directly into her eyes. The hatred there was pure. "I am not competing with Mira," I said. My voice was low, but it did not tremble. "I just require a little respect." My calmness seemed to break something in her. My refusal to crumble, to cry, was not the reaction she wanted. It was fuel. She looked insane. "Respect?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You come in here with your sawdust and your—" Her hand, the one not gripping my wrist, shoved the heavy silver tray, or perhaps my hand, braced for another blow, slipped. A heavy crystal brandy snifter teetered, slid off the polished metal, and shattered on the tile floor. The sound was sharp, brittle, and impossibly loud in the small, cold room. We both froze. The noise was a puncture in the night. Selena's eyes darted to the door, suddenly realizing how this would look, how this would sound. Her grip on my wrist loosened just enough. In that half-second of silence, as Selena processed the new complication of the broken glass, my eyes scanned the room. It is what I am trained to do. Assess the environment, find the exits, the utilities, the risks. And I saw it. It was almost invisible, tucked high in the corner where the wall met the ceiling, right above the reinforced steel service door that led to the outside patio. It was not one of the elegant, white security domes that dotted the main house. This was a small, black industrial motion sensor unit, a tiny pinprick of a status light, glowing a faint green, indicated it was active. It was a secondary camera, a utility camera, the kind we install at Forge Point to monitor service entrances and loading docks for staff management. It was aimed directly at the area where we were standing. Selena had chosen this room because she thought it was a blind spot from the main security feed. She was right, but she had overlooked the service infrastructure. She did not know the building's bones, not like I do. A cold, electric thrill shot through me, overpowering the sting in my cheek. The mask snapped back onto Selena's face. The rage vanished, replaced by a cold, dismissive glare. "Now look what you have done," she snapped, gesturing to the broken glass. "Clumsy, you always were. Clean it up." She turned, smoothing her silk dress, and walked out of the auxiliary kitchen, her heels clicking decisively on the tile. She was already plausible deniability, already the long-suffering stepmother. She returned to the party, ready to resume her role. I stood there for a full minute, my breath steadying. The side of my face was throbbing. A deep, angry ache. I could feel the sharp ridges from her rings. I walked to the industrial sink, grabbed a paper towel, and wet it with cold water, pressing it to my cheek. Then, meticulously, I found the small broom and dustpan tucked beside the trash receptacle and swept up every shard of crystal. I dumped the glass, rinsed the dustpan, and put it back. I adjusted my hair, letting it fall over the right side of my face, a dark curtain to hide the rising, mottled red mark. I left the kitchen and walked back toward the grand hall. The party was winding down. "Andrea, there you are!" Mira hurried toward me, her face pale and anxious. She did not even look at my face, did not notice my half-hidden cheek. "Have you seen the garage card?" she asked, her voice high and strained. "The what?" "The main garage card, the one for the gate. Selena always leaves it on the hall table, and it is gone. I need it." "Why, Mira, it is almost 3 a.m. I need it. I have to go out," she said, wringing her hands. This was strange. Mira never did anything without a reason, usually a selfish one. This nervous energy was new. "If you see it, tell me." She rushed away, scanning the antique tables that lined the hall. This was bizarre. A missing garage card was her priority. I filed the information. It was another piece of a puzzle I was just beginning to see. I found my father saying goodnight to our uncle. I stood beside him, keeping the marked side of my face turned away. Grandfather Lucian appeared at the top of the grand staircase. He did not raise his voice, but the room fell silent. "Thank you all for a wonderful evening," he said, his eyes scanning the faces below. His gaze lingered on me for a second, and I had the distinct impression he saw everything. "A reminder for the immediate family. We will convene in the library tomorrow morning at 9. We will discuss the new rules of succession for the Aurora Trust." A collective, muffled intake of breath. New rules, not just signing the existing papers. I glanced at Selena. She was standing near the fireplace, and for a split second, her composure cracked. It was a flicker of pure, undiluted panic. Her knuckles, gripping her wine glass, were white. This was not her plan. Her plan was for Grandfather to sign a document tonight, a document that, according to her whispers to Paige, would have cut me out completely. The slap was her premature victory celebration. Grandfather had just delayed the execution. He had just given me an opening. I murmured goodnight to my father and uncle and went upstairs. I locked my bedroom door. I did not turn on the light. I sat in the dark, the adrenaline making my mind sharp and clear. I pulled out my phone. My fingers were steady. I opened a secure messaging app to my head of IT at ForgePoint, a man who lives for this kind of challenge. Ben, I typed, I have a situation. I am at Northwood. I need to know the architecture of their security. I think there is an auxiliary camera, maybe channel kitchen back 02, recording to a local server, not the main feed. If I need that footage from 2:17 a.m. tonight, how do I pull it? I hit send. I pressed the cold paper towel back to my cheek. Selena thought she had put me in my place. She had no idea she had just given me the very weapon I needed. I couldn't sleep. The combination of adrenaline, the throbbing sting on my cheek, and Grandfather's 9 a.m. announcement had my mind running at full speed. The house was quiet, but it was the false quiet of a stage between acts. I needed air. A space that was not this room, not this house. I slipped on a robe and walked silently down the back staircase, avoiding the grand hall, and let myself out onto the east terrace. The air was frigid, sharp. It felt good against my burning skin. The terrace was dark, lit only by the snow-covered grounds glowing under the moonlight. I was not alone. At the far end, partially hidden by a large stone planter, stood two figures. One was my half-sister, Mira. The other was Ty Bennett. My heart did a painful, awkward lurch. Ty, we had dated for 2 years in college. A serious, smart, ambitious relationship that had ultimately burned out when I chose to move back to Ridgeview for the ForgePoint apprenticeship, and he had chosen the finance track in Chicago. We had not spoken in at least 4, maybe 5 years. He was an independent financial consultant now, and a very successful one, from what I heard. What was he doing here, at 3 a.m, in a dark corner with Mira? Mira looked agitated, thrusting a small stack of papers toward him. Ty was shaking his head, his posture stiff with discomfort. I stayed in the shadow of the doorway, unmoving. I cannot, Mira, Ty was saying, his voice low but carrying on the cold air. This is not right. This is highly irregular. My mother said it is fine, Mira hissed. She said you just need to review it, to make sure the language is binding. It is just a transfer. A transfer? Ty ran a hand through his hair. Mira, this is not a transfer. This document outlines a transitional fiduciary structure. This is a complex reallocation of voting rights within the trust. This is not something you sign on the back of a napkin at a Christmas party. You need independent counsel, not me. You are independent. I am not your counsel, and I am a guest here. He looked around, suddenly spotting me in the doorway. Andrea. Mira spun around, her face a mask of panic and anger. She snatched the papers back from him and stuffed them into her small, expensive handbag. What are you doing? Spying on me? I was getting some air. Mira. I looked past her to Ty. Ty, it is a surprise to see you here. Andrea, he said again, his voice strained. He looked at my face, and his eyes narrowed slightly, zeroing in on the shadow of my hair. I knew he could see the swelling on my cheek. Lucian invited me. Professional courtesy. Right, Mira grabbed his arm. Ty, we are done here. Come on. No, we are done, Ty said, gently but firmly removing her hand from his arm. Mira, my advice, as a professional, is to do nothing, do not sign anything, talk to your grandfather. You do not know what you are talking about, she snapped, then turned and hurried back inside, her heels clicking in anger. Ty was left standing there, facing me. He looked exhausted. A transitional fiduciary structure, I said, stepping out onto the terrace. He winced. You heard that? I did. She wants to change the voting rights. Ty sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Look, Andy, I am just here as a guest. I ran into Selena at a charity event in Chicago last month. She mentioned the party. I mentioned I was visiting my parents nearby, and Lucian sent a formal invitation. I thought it was just networking. And now you are reviewing trust documents on the terrace. I am not, he said firmly. I refused. She cornered me. Her mother apparently told her I was the best in the business and would help. He looked me straight in the eye. That document? It is designed to transfer control of a significant block of assets to a new trustee, Mira, in the event of your grandfather's incapacitation. But the definition of incapacitation is so broad it could mean anything. It is a power grab. Andrea, a sloppy, transparent one. I stopped. I could not say her name. They are pushing me out. They are trying to get it done before the 9 a.m. meeting. Ty's gaze went back to my cheek. It looks like they are pushing you more than just figuratively. I instinctively touched my face. It is nothing. I walked into a cabinet. He did not believe me, but he let it go. The lawyer of record on those papers is a guy named Nolan Wex. I have heard of him. He is a shark. He specializes in hostile restructurings. Nolan Wex, I repeated, committing the name to memory. Thank you, Ty. Be careful, he said, his voice dropping. This is not a family squabble. The Aurora Trust is a serious piece of machinery. People get greedy. That document was nearly weaponized. Mira is in over her head, and Selena is pushing her. He nodded, a formal, sad gesture, and walked past me to go back inside, leaving me alone with the cold and the new, terrifying pieces of information. Transitional fiduciary, Nolan Wex, a plot to seize control. I went back in, my blood running cold. The sting on my cheek was gone, replaced by a chilling clarity. The $60,000 was not the game. It was a distraction. I walked toward the grand hall. A few relatives were still lingering by the fire, nursing final brandies. Selena was there, glowing, the picture of victorious motherhood. Oh, it is not just a hobby, Selena was saying, her voice bright and dismissive. She was talking to my Uncle Cyrus. Mira has a real vision, a high-class lifestyle brand, curated. Of course, it is about taste. It just requires the right backing. Well, that always helps, Cyrus said, chuckling. We are not worried, Selena said, patting his arm. The funding is readily available. You will see, Mira is poised to be the new public face of the Brooks legacy. The new public face. She was not even hiding it. She was preening. Mira emerged from the hallway, her panic from the terrace gone, replaced by a smug arrogance. She joined her mother, linking her arm through Selena's. You really should have stayed in Ridgeview. Andrea, Mira said suddenly, her voice loud enough for the small group to hear. She was looking right at me. The conversation stopped. All eyes turned to me. This is not really your world, is it? Mira continued, emboldened by her mother's smile. All this, she gestured vaguely at the opulent room. It requires a certain touch, a public presence. Mira, that is enough, my father said weakly, materializing from a nearby chair. No, it is fine, Dad, I said, my voice steady. It is true, Mira pressed on, her voice rising. Tomorrow everything will be different. Grandfather is making changes, and let's be honest, I am a much better public face for this family than you. There it was, a declaration of war, wrapped in a couture dress. Selena's smile faltered. This was too much, too soon. She gave Mira a sharp, warning glance, a silent shut-up, but it was too late. The words were out, hanging in the air like poison. Uncle Cyrus cleared his throat. My Aunt Paige looked down into her drink. The whispers started, a low, sibilant hum. They all knew, or at least suspected. Now, Mira had confirmed it. Across the room, standing alone near the massive dark wood desk, was my grandfather. He had been silent this whole time, observing. He was not looking at Selena or Mira. He was looking at me, watching my reaction. He was fiddling with something in his hand, a single, ornate, heavy brass key. I knew that key. It was the key to the Northwood archive room, A climate-controlled, vault-like room in the oldest part of the basement. It was where he kept the family records, the original blueprints of the estate, the sensitive documents, and according to Ben's text message that had just buzzed in my pocket, it was also where the central security server was housed, a hardwired, closed-loop system. He was holding the key to the evidence. My eyes drifted from the key in his hand to the desk beside him, on the polished mahogany surface. Glowing under the dim light of a green banker's lamp was a thick, cream-colored envelope. The embossing on the flap was unmistakable. Aurora Trust. And in the bottom left corner, the return address. Nolan Wex, Esquire, attorney at law. Ty was right. The draft revisions were already here. They were on the desk. Grandfather had them. He had the lawyer's papers, and he had the key to the server room. I felt like I was going to be sick. The entire night. The slap, the rumors, Ty's warning, Mira's boast. It all coalesced into a single, ugly picture, a coup. And it was happening right now, under the guise of Christmas cheer. I turned without a word and walked out of the grand hall, ignoring my father's quiet, "Andrea?" I went to my room, I locked the door, I pulled out my laptop and my personal tablet. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. Ben's text was simple. Local server, Northwood Basement Archive, 4 8-hour loop on auxiliaries, admin access needed. Physical access is the only way. Find the server rack. I can walk you through the rest if you can get me a remote port. I could not get him a remote port, not yet. First, my own insurance. I opened the folder on my tablet containing the $60,000 of invoices, the photos of the rotted roof trusses, the failing pipes, the bank transfers. I opened my personal non-Brooks email account on my laptop. I meticulously created a rule. I set up a draft email addressed to my personal lawyer in Ridgeview, to the senior partners at ForgePoint, and to Ty Bennett. I attached the first invoice. Then I set up an automation. Send one file from the Dad's House folder every 15 minutes, sequentially, to my own secure cloud inbox. Not to the others, not yet, but the drafts would be populated. The data would be off-site. If they thought they could just push me out and bury what I had spent, they were wrong. The paper trail was now being backed up, piece by piece, into the ether. I finished setting the automation. My laptop glowed, a silent, methodical transmitter. I stood up. My cheek was a dull, persistent drumbeat of pain. I needed ice. I had to go back downstairs. I had to go back to the kitchen. I walked down the main staircase this time, my footsteps muffled by the thick Persian runner. The house was finally, truly silent. The party was over. The guests had gone to bed. I entered the main kitchen, empty, gleaming. I pushed through the swinging door into the service corridor. I stood in front of the auxiliary kitchen door, the room where I had been assaulted. My hand hovered over the handle. I pushed it open. The room was dark, just as before. I stepped inside, my eyes adjusting. The green status light on the industrial refrigerator, the moonlight. I walked toward the industrial ice machine, and then I saw it. It was not the main motion sensor high in the corner. It was something else, something I had missed in the shock of the moment. Tucked under the lip of a stainless steel shelf, held in place with black electrical tape, was a small cylindrical device. It looked like an expensive pen, but the end of it held a tiny, dark lens, and next to that lens, a single pinprick of light glowed a steady, faint red. It was not just active, it was recording. It was not part of the house's official security. It was a spy camera, a nanny cam. My grandfather, the man who was holding the key to the main server room, had a backup. He was not just watching the feeds, he was planting his own. The camera I had seen, the kitchen back 02, was the official one. This was something else. This was a failsafe. I backed out of the kitchen slowly. The game was infinitely more complex than I had realized. I was not the only one with secrets, and my grandfather was not a passive victim waiting for a coup. He was a spider, and he had just watched a fly attack another fly, right in the center of his web. The sight of that second camera, that deliberate, planted spy device, changed the equation. It meant my grandfather was not just an observer, he was an active participant. He was gathering his own private intelligence. The question was, for what purpose? Was he protecting the family, or was he protecting himself? Did he see Selena's aggression, or was he setting a trap for me? I could not rely on his footage. I could not rely on his motives. The official server footage, the one Kitchen Back 02 was recording to, was my only objective, neutral witness, and I needed to get to it before Selena, or anyone else, realized it existed and tried to destroy it. My adrenaline was a cold, clean fuel. Sleep was impossible. I changed out of the silk dress and the robe, pulling on dark jeans, a black cashmere sweater, and my most practical, soft-soled sneakers. If I was going to move through this house, I was going to do it as a project manager, not as a victim. The house was still. It was past 3 a.m. I slipped out of my room, my phone in my back pocket, my small keychain USB drive, a standard tool of my trade, always loaded with diagnostic software and blank storage, tucked into my front pocket. I moved through the upper hallway, every step measured. The old house groaned and settled around me, the sounds of its age amplified by the silence. I took the service staircase, the one the staff used, which I knew was less prone to creaking. It let me out into the main service corridor on the ground floor, far from the grand hall. I followed the corridor, past the kitchens, past the pantries, toward the wing that housed my grandfather's private study and the entrance to the wine cellar, and next to it, the archive room. As I expected, the door was a formidable slab of dark oak, reinforced with a steel frame and fitted with a high-security, non-electronic lock. It was the kind of lock designed to resist force, not electronic bypass. I tried the handle. It was solid, unmoving, locked. Of course it was. I stood in the cold hallway, listening. Nothing. My mind raced. A locked door is just a problem statement. You go over, under, or through. Through was not an option. Under was impossible. That left over. I scanned the ceiling. The corridor had a suspended ceiling, acoustic tiles sitting in a metal grid. This was a service hallway, which meant the space above it was not structural. It was a plenum, a space for ducts, wiring, and technical access. I flashed back to a memory from when I was 12, or maybe 13, playing hide-and-seek with a cousin during a miserably boring family Thanksgiving. I had hidden in the janitor's closet, and to win. I had climbed the shelving and pushed up a ceiling tile, hiding in the darkness above. I remembered seeing a vast, dark world of metal and wires. The janitor's closet was 30 feet back down the hall. I moved to it. The door was unlocked. Inside, the smell of ammonia and floor wax, and there, against the far wall, was a heavy-duty, 8-foot aluminum folding ladder, the service team's ladder. I took it, unfolding it as quietly as I could. The click-click of the locking hinges sounded like gunshots in the silence. I carried it back to the archive room door. I positioned the ladder directly under the tile grid. I climbed. The tile was light, made of compressed fiber. I pushed it up and slid it aside. A small drift of dust fell onto my shoulder. I pulled my phone out and turned on the flashlight, aiming it into the void. It was exactly as I remembered. A dark, tight crawl space, maybe 3 feet high, crisscrossed with HVAC ducts, electrical conduits, and thick bundles of data cables running in metal trays. This was the house's central nervous system. I am a builder. I understand infrastructure. This was my world. I saw the main bundle of Cat-T6 and fiber optic cables. They were the ones that would feed the server. I just had to follow them. I pulled myself up into the space, resting my weight on the metal struts of the grid, not the fragile tiles. I lay on my stomach, reached down, and folded the ladder, pushing it back down the hall into the darkness so it was not directly under the opening. Then I pulled the ceiling tile back into place, plunging myself into absolute dusty darkness. I turned my phone's light back on. Keeping it aimed low, I began to crawl. It was slow, claustrophobic work. The air was thick with cold dust that tickled my nose. I moved with agonizing care, testing each strut before putting my weight on it, my hands brushing against the cold, rigid metal of the ducts. The data cables were my guide, a multicolored river leading me toward the house's digital heart. I crawled for what felt like an eternity, the only sound my own breathing and the faint scrape of my jeans on the metal. Finally, the cable tray made a 90-degree turn, dropping down toward the floor of the room below. I was directly over the archive room. I found the nearest ceiling tile. I pushed it slowly, carefully, sliding it off its grid. I looked down. The room was dark. I could see the tall, black shape of the server rack against the far wall, its own constellation of tiny green and blue status lights blinking. It was a straight drop, maybe 10 feet, too high. I scanned the darkness. Directly below me was a large, flat-topped oak filing cabinet, a much safer landing. I sat on the edge of the grid, swung my legs through the hole, and dropped. I landed on the cabinet with a soft thud, my sneakers absorbing the impact. I froze, listening. Silence. I hopped down to the floor. The air in the room was cold, climate-controlled. I used my phone light to navigate. The room was lined with shelves of leather-bound ledgers. In the center was a heavy oak table, and against the wall, the server rack. It was a professional-grade setup, a main server, a power backup, and a network video recorder, the NVR. I went straight to the NVR. The interface was on a small, attached monitor. It was password protected, as I expected. I tried the house's standard maintenance code. Access denied. I tried the default admin password for this brand of NVR. Access granted. Selena, for all her cunning, was sloppy. She understood social power, not technical security. She would not have even known this existed, let alone how to secure it. The interface was a grid of camera feeds. I found the channel list: main hall, front gate, east terrace, kitchen main, kitchen back 01. And there it was. Kitchen back 02. I clicked it. The feed was live, showing the dark, empty auxiliary kitchen. I opened the playback menu. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I selected the channel and navigated the timeline. I scrolled back, the footage flickering in reverse. 4 a.m., 3 a.m. I stopped at 2:17 a.m. I hit play. The image was clear. High-resolution infrared. It was grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. The audio was a faint hiss, but the microphone was sensitive. I saw myself enter the room. I saw Selena follow. I watched, detached, as she cornered me. I saw her hand clamp onto my wrist. I saw her face, distorted with rage. I saw the slap. The crack of it was sharp, even on the recording. I watched her shove the tray. I watched the glass break. I watched her sneer and walk out. It was all there. My hand was shaking. I checked the NVR settings. The retention policy, just as Ben had suspected, was a rolling 36-hour loop. This footage would be automatically erased in just over a day. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket. I found the peripheral port on the front of the NVR. I plugged it in. The system recognized the external drive. I found the export function. I selected Kitchen Back 02. Start time, 02:16:45. End time, 02:18:30. A full 2 minutes. I hit Export. A progress bar appeared. It was agonizingly slow. 1%. The silence of the room was absolute, broken only by the whir of the server fans. 5%. And then I heard it. A sound from the hallway. A key sliding into the heavy lock. My blood turned to ice. I had no time. The export was only at 10%. I could not get back to the ceiling. I could not hide under the table. The lock mechanism gave a heavy mechanical thunk. I dove. I scrambled behind the server rack, squeezing my body into the narrow 2-foot gap between the back of the rack and the wall. It was a nest of hot, thick cables. The fans were loud, a roar in my ears. I crouched in the darkness, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. The door swung open. I saw a sliver of light from the hallway. then the dark silhouette of a man. He stepped inside. He did not turn on the main overhead lights. Instead, he walked to the central table and switched on the small, green banker's lamp, the one I had seen him near earlier. It was my grandfather. He stood by the table, his back to me, his form illuminated in the pool of green light. He looked at the server rack. I held my breath, certain he could hear the sound of my heart. The export progress bar, on the monitor I could no longer see, was probably at 30%. He did not move toward the rack. He pulled his phone from the pocket of his silk robe. He dialed a number. He waited. "It is me," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I have a directive. The security feed. Auxiliary kitchen. Channel kitchen back 02. I want all playback rights locked. Effective immediately. Authorization required for access. My authorization. Only—" I pressed my back against the wall, my skin cold. He knew. He knew exactly what was on it. He was not deleting it. He was seizing control of it. He listened for a moment. "I do not care what the standard protocol is. Lock it now, and confirm with me when it is done." He hung up. He stood in silence for a long moment, looking at the rack. He was looking right at the NVR. He had to know I was here. This had to be a trap. He reached into his robe pocket and pulled out the heavy brass key, the key to this room. He placed it, very deliberately, on the desk, right in the center of the pool of light from the lamp. Then he turned around. He walked out of the room, leaving the door open. He did not look back. He did not look behind the server. I waited. 1 minute, 2. The silence of the house rushed back in. I crept out from behind the rack, my legs shaking. I ran to the NVR. The export was complete. 100%, file transferred successfully. I ripped the USB drive from the port. I looked at the desk. The key was still there, gleaming. This was not a trap. It was an invitation. It was a test. He had forgotten the key. He had locked the footage from remote access, but he had just given me the physical evidence and the key to the room containing the master copy. He was letting me have it. He was daring me to use it. I grabbed the key, I went to the door, pulled it shut, and used the key to lock it from the inside. Then I turned the interior thumb turn, opened the door, and stepped out into the hallway. Pulling it shut behind me, the heavy lock clicked into place. I pocketed the key and the USB drive. I turned to go. "Found what you were looking for?" I spun around, my heart stopping. Ty Bennett was leaning against the far wall of the corridor, his arms crossed. He must have been standing there, in the dark, this entire time. He had not seen me go in, but he had seen my grandfather enter, and he had just seen me exit, locking the door behind me. I said nothing, my mind scrambling. He did not look angry or accusatory. He just looked tired. He pushed himself off the wall and took a few steps toward me. He did not look at the door. He did not look at the key in my hand, which I quickly slipped into my pocket. He looked at my face. The light from the hallway sconce was dim, but it was enough. "Your cheek," he said, his voice quiet. "It is red, really red. Are you okay?" My face was on fire, but the cold, clear logic in my head was a welcome antidote. I was standing in a dark hallway, a few feet from the man who had been my first real love. "Ty," I said, my voice low and steady. I did not bother to deny it. I had the key in one hand, the USB in the other. "What are you doing here?" "I could not sleep," he said, not moving. "I saw your grandfather come down here. He looked determined. Then he left, leaving the door open. I was about to go check on him when you came out and locked it. He finally looked at the key in my hand. That's the archive room key. He left it for me." "He what?" "He left it on the desk. He knew I was in there, or at least, he suspected." Ty took a step closer, into the dim pool of light. His eyes were fixed on my cheek. "He knew you were in there, and he let you? Andrea, what is going on? That mark on your face, that is not from a cabinet." I pocketed the key and the USB. It is not. Was it Selena? I just looked at him. That was answer enough. In the auxiliary kitchen, he pieced it together, his voice a tight whisper. When Mira was looking for you, oh, Andy. I have it, Ty, I said, cutting off the sympathy. I did not have time for sympathy. I have the footage. Kitchen back 02, just like I told Ben. You have a team on this? I have a plan. I'm a project manager, remember? So what's your plan? He asked. You'll show it at the 9 a.m. meeting? Ambush them? I do not know yet. He shook his head, looking at me with a pained expression. I told you, I'm here as an observer for your grandfather. He's concerned. He knows someone is moving against him. He just does not know how deep it goes. He asked me to join the meeting. So you're on his side. I am on the side of the facts, which, right now, seems to be your side. But listen to me. He grabbed my arm, his voice urgent. Do not lead with the slap. Please, do not. Why not? It is the truth. Because it is emotional. It is, he said, she said, until you play the tape. And the second you play it, you look vengeful. Selena will spin it. She will say you provoked her. She will cry. Your father will get confused. You will lose the room. You are precise. You are a builder. Do not start with the emotional wreckage. Start with the foundation, the money. The 60,000. Exactly. The document I saw from Nolan Wex, the one Mira had? It is a power grab. But to make it work, they have to discredit you. They have to paint you as unstable, or greedy, or both. That $60,000 you spent on the house? That is how they will do it. They will say you already took your inheritance. They will say you are trying to extort them. You have to get ahead of that. Lead with your facts, not your feelings. Lead with the invoices. He was right. He was absolutely right. Selena had already tested that narrative, calling my work interfering. Lead with the invoices, I repeated, the plan crystallizing. Start with the foundation. Start with the foundation, he confirmed. They are expecting a fight over the will. Give them a fight over a budget. It is the one place you are untouchable. Then, when you have them on the defensive, you pivot. Thank you, Ty. He let go of my arm. Go. Get some sleep. I never saw you tonight. He turned and walked down the hall, disappearing toward the guest wing. I went upstairs, my mind clear. I had the weapon. Now, I had the strategy. I got maybe 2 hours of sleep, a tense, dreamless void. At 7 a.m., I was in the shower. I spent a full 30 minutes on my makeup, a thick, careful application of concealer and foundation to neutralize the angry red swelling on my cheek. It was not a bruise, not yet, but it was ugly. I covered it until it was just a dull, flat patch of skin, stiff and unnatural, but hidden. I walked down to the breakfast room at 8:30. The air was thick with a toxic, post-party silence. My father was nursing a coffee, looking gray. Mira and Selena were at the table, dressed in expensive morning silks, whispering to each other. Grandfather was at the head of the table, reading the Wall Street Journal as if it were any other day. Selena looked up as I entered. Her smile was a ray of artificial sunshine. "Andrea?" "Darling," she said, her voice loud enough for the room to hear. She stood and walked toward me, her hands clasped in front of her. "I must offer you the most sincere apology. I was just so exhausted last night, and I was horrified when I saw that broken brandy snifter. I was unforgivably sharp with you." I stood still. She was setting the public narrative. She was apologizing to me for being sharp about a mess I supposedly made. "I simply do not tolerate clumsiness, and I snapped," she continued, a perfect picture of remorse. "It was a silly, silly thing. Of course, it is forgotten." "Of course," I said, my voice neutral. My father looked relieved. "Wonderful. Now, come, eat something," she chirped. "It is a big day. Lucian has his big, boring meeting." She looked at my cheek, her eyes narrowing for a fraction of a second at the thick makeup. She thought I was hiding in shame. She smiled. triumphant, and returned to her seat. At 9 a.m. sharp, we convened in the library. It was a cold, imposing room. Grandfather sat at the head of the heavy mahogany table. My father, Selina, Mira, and I took seats. Aunt Paige was also there, as was Uncle Cyrus. Ty was present, as he predicted, sitting in a leather chair set slightly back from the main table, his role clearly that of an observer. "Thank you all for being prompt," Grandfather began, his voice dry. "As you know, the Aurora Trust requires periodic review to ensure its mission is aligned with the family's future. There are propositions on the table for a significant restructuring." Selina sat up straighter, a small, hungry smile on her face. This was what she had been waiting for. "However," Grandfather continued, "before we can discuss the future, we must have absolute clarity on the present. It has come to my attention that there are unresolved financial matters that may impact the Trust's allocations." He turned his gaze, not to Selina, but to me. "Andrea, you have the floor." This was it. The air was sucked out of the room. Selina's smile vanished, replaced by a look of wary confusion. I took a breath. I stood, my tablet in my hand. I plugged it into the large monitor on the wall. Ty caught my eye. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "Foundation." "Thank you." "Grandfather," I said. "I agree. Transparency is paramount, which is why I need to clarify for the record a series of personal expenditures I have made on behalf of my father and Selina over the past 18 months. My father looked baffled. "Andrea, what are you—" I clicked the first slide, a picture of his roof, the rotted trusses exposed to the sky. It began with the roof leak. Dad, the one Selina mentioned, was being handled by insurance. I clicked again, the invoice from my best roofing crew. $22,500, paid from my personal account. Selina's face began to tighten. "Andrea, this is hardly the time or place." I clicked again, a photo of the burst cast iron pipes in the basement. Then the plumbing, $14,000. Click, the dead HVAC unit, $8,000. Click, the kitchen wiring and remodel, which I managed to contain at $16,000, despite the requests for imported marble. I finally landed on the master spreadsheet. The total outlay, with labor and materials at cost, is $60,412.97. My father looked like he was going to be sick. "Good God. Andy, I had no idea. Selina, you said—" "She said it was a gift." Selina's voice was high, brittle. She stood up, her hands flat on the table. "This is outrageous. We thanked you. Andrea, it was a generous family gesture. Are you billing your own father? In front of everyone? How incredibly tacky." Aunt Paige scoffed. "Trying to buy your way in, Andrea, is that it?" Selina pointed at me. "She is trying to extort us. This is what she does. She thinks her cute little workshop gives her the right to hold this family hostage." "No," I said, my voice cutting through her tirade. The room fell silent. "You are absolutely right. Selina, a gift is a gift. I am not asking for the money back." I watched the confusion ripple across their faces. My father looked relieved. Selina looked suspicious. "Then what is the point of this, Andrea?" my grandfather asked, his voice even. I turned off the monitor. The invoices vanished. "The point, Grandfather, is not the money. The point is transparency. And the point," I turned my head to look directly at Selina, "is respect." "Respect?" Mira spat. Unable to contain herself, she shot to her feet. "You are the one presenting spreadsheets like an auditor. You are trying to make Mom and Dad look incompetent. This is just because you are jealous. You are angry about the will. You just want a bigger piece of the Aurora Trust." "Mira," my father snapped. "It is true," she shrieked. "You want to take what is mine." "That is enough." Grandfather's voice was like a thunderclap. The room was deathly quiet. He fixed his gaze on his granddaughter. "Mira, you will stick to the facts. Andrea has presented facts, invoices, photographs. Dates. Do you have any facts to present? Or just baseless, hysterical accusations? Mira crumpled back into her chair, her face burning. She looked at her mother, who was now pale. I had seized the narrative. They were the ones who were emotional, who were hysterical. I was the one with the facts. I let the silence sit for a full 10 seconds. I would have let the $60,000 go, I said, my voice low and steady. I would have eaten the loss. I would have let you call it a tacky gift. I would have stayed silent this morning, Selina. I did not move my eyes from hers. But I cannot stay silent, not after our conversation in the auxiliary kitchen last night. If that spot had truly been a blind spot, with no cameras, I would have walked away. I would have let you push me out. I would have let you win. I saw it, the flicker of pure, unadulterated terror in her eyes. She was trapped. Cameras? She scoffed, but her voice was a full octave higher. What on earth are you talking about? Are you threatening me now? She's delusional, she said, appealing to the table. She's making up stories about cameras. I am not making anything up, I said. You chose that room for a reason. You said so yourself. I said no such thing. That area, it is a service entrance. It is not covered, she blurted out. Everyone knows that. It is a blind spot. Gotcha. A public admission that she believed it was unmonitored. Andrea, my father said, his voice shaking. What happened in the auxiliary kitchen? She broke a glass, Selina yelled, standing up. She was clumsy. She dropped a snifter, and I yelled at her. That is all that happened. She is twisting a simple scolding into this. I just looked at her. I did not need to say another word. I just let her frantic denial hang in the air. Grandfather Lucian, who had been watching this exchange with the intensity of a hawk, slowly raised his hand. Enough. He turned his head to his household manager, Mr. Davies, who was standing by the door. Mr. Davies, Grandfather said, his voice calm and lethal. Please arrange for the full, unedited security feed from Kitchen Back 02 to be queued up in the main screening room this afternoon at, let us say, 3 p.m. Selina made a small, choking sound. She physically swayed, gripping the back of her chair for support. Since there seems to be such profound confusion over the simple matter of a broken glass, Grandfather continued, his cold eyes sweeping the table, we will review the footage together, as a family, to ensure all misunderstandings are permanently cleared up. He looked directly at Selina, who had gone the color of ash. You seem so certain that area was not covered. Selina, let us find out, shall we? He pushed his chair back and stood. This meeting is adjourned until 3 o'clock. The library emptied as if a dam had broken. People fled the room, desperate to escape the suffocating tension. My father looked at me, his face a mask of confusion and pain. Andrea, a camera? She hit you? We'll see at 3. Dad, I said, my voice softer than I intended. I could not look at him. Selina did not flee. She was a cornered animal. She grabbed Mira's arm, her fingers digging into her daughter's flesh, and dragged her toward the morning room. We need to talk. Now. I did not follow, but I moved into the adjacent hallway, a service corridor I knew well. The walls at Northwood are thick, but the ventilation grates are old and carry sound perfectly. I stood beneath the ornate brass grate, listening. He cannot show that, Mira was hissing, her voice on the verge of tears. He cannot. Mom, they'll see. Do you think I do not know that? Selina's voice was a low, vicious snarl. He is bluffing. He has to be. He did not look like he was bluffing. He looked happy. And that bitch, Mira spat. She set us up. She knew. She trapped you. Shut up and think. He locked the feed. Davies confirmed it this morning. We tried. He put an admin lock on it. Even I cannot get in. We cannot delete it. So what do? We can swap the file, like we planned for the other thing. We cannot just swap the file, you idiot, Selena snapped. This is not your social media account. It is a closed-loop NVR, Ben, that IT man of hers. He set up the new system for Lucian 2 years ago. It has a digital signature on every file. If we try to alter it, if we splice in a new clip, it will flag as tampered the second he hits play. It will be worse. It will prove we are guilty. So what, we just let him? Mira sounded truly terrified. No. We stop it from being shown. We find a new angle. This is not over. Your future is not going to be ruined by that little... I heard a door slam. The conversation was over. They had no way to alter the evidence. Their only option was to stop the screening itself. I walked away from the vent. My heart a cold. Steady drum. I had them. As I entered the grand hall, I saw Aunt Paige slip into the alcove by the main telephone, her own cell phone pressed to her ear. She was speaking in a frantic whisper. I moved behind a large Chinese vase, just out of sight. Nolan, it is me. You have to file it. Yes, now. Nolan Wex, the lawyer from the document Ty had seen. Paige was tapping her foot, a frantic rhythm on the marble floor. I do not care what the registrar says. You call in the favor. I need that amendment filed before 3 p.m. Before, do you understand me? The situation has escalated. Just do it. She slammed the phone down, her face pale. The connection was stark. They were trying to finalize the will amendment, the one that cut me out, before the evidence of Selena's assault could be shown. They knew the video would derail everything. This was a race. I felt a hand on my elbow. I startled, spinning around. It was Ty. Walk with me, he murmured, his face grim. He steered me away from the alcove, toward the empty conservatory. You were right, I said. They are panicking. Paige is on the phone with Wex right now, trying to push the will through before the screening. That is because the will is tied to this, he said, pulling out his own tablet. He did not have spreadsheets of invoices. He had flowcharts. I spent the last few hours digging into Mr. Wex and his known associates. It did not take long to find this. He pointed to a name in a box on the screen. Marigold Axis, LLC. Marigold Axis, I repeated. The name was unfamiliar, but it sounded like the kind of bland, anonymous name designed to be forgotten. It is a shell company, registered in Delaware 6 months ago, standard anonymous setup, but I ran a trace on its seed funding. The initial deposits did not come from a bank. They came, in small structured amounts, from a high-limit personal credit card. He tapped the screen. A new chart appeared. Selena's card, I breathed, seeing the transaction log. She has been funding it. To the tune of over $200,000 in the last quarter alone. She is bleeding money into this thing, and Marigold Axis? Its sole activity is purchasing shares in one specific entity, the Aurora Retail REIT, one of your grandfather's subsidiary funds. She is buying pieces of the trust? She is trying, Ty corrected. But look at the dates of her transfers. He highlighted a half-dozen dates. Each one, within an hour, corresponds to something else I found in the estate's IT logs. He switched screens. Your grandfather had me looking for financial irregularities, but I also have access to the system logs. Look, intermittent signal loss, tiny gaps in the data record, just 30 to 90 seconds long, always from the same area, the server room. I stared at the screen, my mind connecting the dots, the server room, the garage, Mira. Last night, I said, thinking aloud. Mira was frantic. She could not find the garage card. The garage card, Ty said, his eyes widening. It is not for the cars, is it? It is an RFID master key. It opens the garage, but it also opens the service areas, the IT closets, the archive room. She was the one creating the signal losses, I said. She was using the card to get into the server room, but why? To cover her mother's tracks? Or to help, maybe those signal losses were her trying to disable the financial tracking software, Or maybe she was trying to delete security footage of herself accessing the room. She is the technical side of their operation. Selena provides the motive. Mira provides the sloppy execution. They are in this together. The will amendment is not just to cut you out, Andrea. It is to give Mira control so they can validate these illegal share purchases. They are not just pushing you out, they are stealing. I felt sick. The $60,000 I spent on the house, it was not just a debt she was ignoring. She was actively funneling that money, and more, into her own pocket. She needed that $60,000 from you to cover the hole in their household accounts, Ty said. You were not giving her a gift. You were funding her theft. We stood in the cold conservatory, the pieces of the puzzle forming a dark, ugly picture. The assault, the will, the shell company, the server room. It was all one big, desperate, criminal conspiracy. At 2:50 p.m., the family began to reassemble in the library, which was adjacent to the main screening room. The atmosphere was poisonous. Selena and Mira sat together on a sofa, rigid, their faces pale and defiant. My father kept pacing, unable to look at anyone. Aunt Paige was checking her watch every 10 seconds. At 3 o'clock on the dot, Mr. Davies, the household manager, stepped into the room. A message from Mr. Brooks, he announced, his voice devoid of emotion. His call with the Hong Kong trustees is running unexpectedly long. He asks for your patience. The family screening will be postponed for 2 hours. He paused, letting the words sink in. He will see you all at 5 p.m., precisely. A collective, ragged breath was let out. Selena's eyes snapped shut. A moment of pure, desperate relief. 2 more hours. This was not a call. This was not Hong Kong. This was my grandfather. He was a master of psychological warfare. He had just turned the pressure dial up to its maximum. He was giving them 2 more hours to panic, to make a mistake, to reveal themselves. He was giving me 2 hours. The group dispersed again. I watched Selena and Paige huddle, then separate. Paige rushed back to the phone. Selena walked, stiff-legged, toward the rear of the house. I followed her. I found her on the small, windswept stone terrace behind the auxiliary kitchen, the very same service entrance from last night. She was smoking a cigarette, her hand shaking so violently that ash fluttered to the ground with every nervous twitch. She did not hear me approach. It was a good plan, I said. She jumped, spinning around, the cigarette falling from her fingers. You! What are you doing here? Spying on me again? Your plan, I said, walking toward her, stopping a few feet away. The cold air stung my face. It was sloppy, but it was comprehensive. The financial drain, the will, the smear campaign, the assault. You covered all the bases. I have no idea what you are talking about, she spat, her eyes darting around the empty terrace. You are insane. I am not, and I am not here to talk about the money. I am not even here to talk about the screening at 5. I looked at the steel service door. I am here to understand one thing. You and we both know you chose this spot. You told Mira you could not swap the file because of the digital signature. You are smart enough to know the house's layout. You thought this was a blind spot. You brought me here to hurt me where no one could see. I stepped closer. So tell me why. Not the broken glass, not the invoices. Why did you have to hit me? She stared at me, her face crumbling. The mask of the elegant hostess was gone. The cunning schemer was gone. All that was left was a petty, terrified woman, consumed by a hatred I had never fully grasped. She leaned in, her voice a low, poisonous whisper, thick with contempt. Because you will not go away, she hissed. Because you do not belong here. You walk into this house, my house, with your sawdust on your boots and your quiet judgment. You are her daughter. You are a ghost. And you look at me. You look at my daughter. Like we are not good enough. Like we are stupid. Her eyes were wild. This is Mira's legacy. This is her future. She is the one who fits. She is the one who belongs. You are just a complication. You are not family. She smiled then, a thin, cruel smile. I hit you because I wanted to. I hit you because you do not belong in this family, and I knew no one would ever believe you over me. A faint sound behind me, the soft click of a door latch. Selena's eyes widened, looking past my shoulder. I did not turn around. I did not have to. I had seen the reflection in the dark glass of the kitchen window. My grandfather was standing in the open doorway, not 10 feet away. He had not been on a call. He had been standing there, silent as stone. He had heard her. He had not just heard the confession of the assault. He had heard the motive. You do not belong in this family. His face, which I had seen as calculating, amused, even neutral, was now something I had never seen before. It was cold. It was devoid of all ambiguity. It was the face of a man who had just passed sentence. Selena's breath hitched. Lucian, He said nothing. He just looked at her, his eyes like chips of ice. Then he turned his gaze to me. His expression did not change. Andrea, he said, his voice flat. It is 4:50. It is time. The walk back into the house was the longest of my life. My grandfather held the door, his face an unreadable mask. He did not look at Selena, who followed us like a ghost, her face ashen, her earlier fury replaced by a cold, hollow terror. He had heard it all, the confession, the motive, the raw, unfiltered hatred. The game was over. This was the reckoning. We did not return to the library. He led the procession, not to a meeting room, but to the main drawing room, a formal space usually reserved for holidays and major announcements. It had been transformed. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn, plunging the room into a deep twilight. Though it was bright afternoon outside, all the furniture, the antique sofas, the heavy wingback chairs, had been rearranged to face the far wall, where a massive projector screen, normally hidden behind a tapestry, was now lowered and waiting. Mr. Davies, the household manager, stood near the front by a small podium, a laptop open and glowing. His expression was one of severe professional neutrality. My father, Mira, Aunt Paige, and Uncle Cyrus were already there, seated, their faces a pale landscape of confusion and dread. Ty was present, standing near the back wall, his arms crossed, his tablet held loosely in one hand. He met my eyes, a silent, grim acknowledgement. Selena entered, her steps faltering, and sank into a chair. She looked small, her bravado completely gone. Lucian, my father began, his voice shaky. What is this? Andrea, what happened on that terrace? Selena, she looks... Silence, Graham, my grandfather commanded. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the room, silencing all of us. He did not sit. He stood by the main door, a sentinel. Mr. Davies, lock the doors. The heavy, old-fashioned deadbolt made a loud, definitive thunk. The sound sealed us in. This was not a discussion. It was a tribunal. As we were forced to adjourn, grandfather began, his voice echoing in the dark. There was a profound disagreement about the events of last night, a simple matter of a broken glass. We are here to find clarity. His eyes found Selena in the dim light. Mr. Davies, play the feed. Channel Kitchen Back 02, timestamp, 2:17 a.m. Mr. Davies nodded, his fingers moving on the laptop. The screen lit up. The image was grainy, high-contrast infrared. The time code glowed in the bottom corner. The auxiliary kitchen, empty. Then, I entered the frame. A moment later, Selena followed. Her movements were sharp, aggressive. The room was deathly quiet. The only sound the faint whir of the projector. We watched her face, twisted in rage, her voice a silent snarl on the screen. We watched her hand shoot out and clamp onto my wrist, my body flinching. And then, the slap. The audio was weak, compressed, but in the dead silence of the drawing room, it was a thunderclap, a sharp, wet crack that echoed off the digital walls. My father made a strangled noise, a small, wounded sound, half rising from his chair. God, no. Aunt Paige's hand flew to her mouth. Selina herself was not moving. She was staring at the screen, at her own image, her eyes wide with a strange, horrified detachment. The video played on. It showed her shoving me, my back hitting the edge of the stainless steel prep table. It showed my hand, the one she was not gripping, slipping as I braced myself. The brandy snifter slid, teetering, and shattered on the floor. It showed her leaning in, her face inches from mine, her words unheard, but her expression one of utter contempt. It showed her sneering. "Clean it up," and then turning, smoothing her dress, and walking out of frame, the perfect hostess once more. The footage froze on the image of my back, standing alone in the room. The screen went dark. The lights did not come up. We sat in the heavy, absolute darkness, the only sound my father's short, ragged breaths. It was just a fight. The voice was Mira's. It was high, thin, and hysterical. It was a normal argument. She probably provoked her. People yell. They fight. She was clumsy. She broke the glass. The entire room, even my father in his grief, turned to stare at where she was sitting. The lie was so stunningly, profoundly stupid. We had all just seen it. The violence came before the glass. "A normal argument?" Uncle Cyrus whispered, his voice shaking with a disgust I had never heard from him. "That was not an argument. Mira, that was assault." "Mr. Davies?" Grandfather's voice cut in, as cold as ice. "Rewind, please, to the moment just before the fight. Play it in slow motion, and zoom in, Section 7B, Mrs. Brooks's left wrist." The footage rewound, a ghostly flicker. It played again, this time at 1/4 speed. The image was less clear, but as Davies magnified the requested section, a new detail emerged. There, on Selina's wrist, partially hidden by the cuff of her silk blouse, was a thin black plastic band. Attached to it, a small, square, gray fob. "What is that?" Aunt Paige murmured. "That, Mr. Davies said, his voice flat and unemotional, "is a Level 3 maintenance and IT access card. It is issued only to the head of household security and the primary technical contractors. It is not issued to family." Selina looked down at her own wrist, as if just realizing she was no longer wearing it. "Now," Grandfather continued, "please display the system access logs for that specific card ID for the past 90 days. The video feed was replaced by a screen of scrolling text, green on black, a log file. "As you can see," Davies narrated, using a red laser pointer to highlight the lines, "this card was used to access the basement archive room 27 times. The entries are almost exclusively between the hours of 2 and 5 a.m. He highlighted a series of dates and times. You will note these access times: 3:14 a.m., 4:02 a.m., 2:31 a.m. They correspond precisely to the intermittent signal losses and backup failures that Mr. Bennett noted in his initial financial audit." Selina made a small, choking sound. She was trying to cover her tracks. Ty's voice came from the back of the room. He stepped forward, into the projector's light. She was accessing the server room, but she is an amateur. She was trying to delete financial records, but all she managed to do was create gaps in the data. Short, 30-second backup failures, the same gaps that happened to mask her wire transfers. "She was sloppy," I said. It was the first time I had spoken. Every head turned to me. "She was sloppy," I repeated, standing up. "She was so focused on trying to delete the records from the main server that she never realized I had my own copy." I pulled the small black USB drive from my pocket. I pulled this copy directly from the NVR at approximately 2:45 a.m., before any of her subsequent tampering attempts, before Grandfather's official lock on the system. It is an independent, clean backup of what you just saw. I walked to the podium and handed the drive to Mr. Davies. "How Selina whispered, her voice a dry rasp. The door was locked. I checked it. It was locked, Grandfather said, stepping forward. It was locked when I arrived, because I heard my granddaughter climbing through the ceiling to get into it. The room gasped. I looked at him, stunned. He had known, from the very beginning. I was in the hallway, he said. I heard you. Andrea, I knew why you were there, so I played my part. I locked the system remotely to see what she would do, and I left the key on the desk to see what you would do. His cold eyes swept the room, landing on Selina, then Mira. I set the test. I wanted to see who was trying to destroy the evidence, and who was trying to secure the truth. Selina and Mira spent the morning in a panic, trying to find a way to alter the file. Andrea simply made a backup. The test is over. There is, he continued, one final piece of business. Mr. Davies, please open the door. Our final guest has arrived. The deadbolt clicked. The door opened. A man in an expensive suit stood in the doorway, flanked by one of the estate's plainclothes security guards. He looked terrified, his briefcase clutched to his chest. Mr. Nolan Wex, Grandfather said, how kind of you to join us on Christmas Day. Aunt Paige let out a small, strangled cry. She had been caught. I do not understand, Wex stammered, looking from Paige to my grandfather. My client, Ms. Paige Brooks, insisted I come immediately to finalize the testamentary amendments. She said it was an emergency. It is, Grandfather said. Please, Mr. Wex, show us the amendment you were so desperately trying to file before this screening, and more importantly, show us the email chain that gave you that directive. Wex, now visibly sweating, fumbled with his briefcase. He knew he was trapped. He pulled out his laptop and, under the guard's gaze, handed it to Mr. Davies. A moment later, an email appeared on the giant screen. From S. Brooks, admin at Marigold Axis, LLC. To Nwex at Wex Law. Com, subject, urgent, Brooks, trust finalization. Nolan, per our discussion, you must execute the incapacitation and transitional fiduciary clause immediately. Lucian is unwell. We are invoking the clause. File it. Push it through. It must be done by 3 p.m. Marigold Axis LLC, Ty said, stepping forward. Mr. Wex, you have been taking legal directives regarding the Aurora Trust from an anonymous, unregistered shell company. My client, Wex said, his voice failing, is Mrs. Selina Brooks. She instructed me this was a private family administrative account. Let me show you what Marigold Axis is, Ty said. He connected his own tablet. The screen filled with his flowcharts, a spider's web of deceit. Marigold Axis LLC is a shell company. It was funded entirely by Mrs. Selina Brooks, using funds siphoned from her and my father's joint household accounts, including, as it happens, the $60,000 Andrea provided for house repairs. She has been using this laundered money to illegally purchase shares in the Aurora Retail REIT, one of the Trust's public-facing funds. He pointed to a box labeled The Plan. It was simple. Use the incapacitation clause drafted by Mr. Wex to seize control of the trust via Mira. Use that new control to retroactively approve her own illegal stock purchases, making the theft look like a legitimate acquisition. And of course, legally and financially erase the one person smart enough to figure it all out. He looked at me. The room was utterly silent. Then, my father stood up. He was not crying. His face was white, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles were bone. He was staring at Selina, but it was not the look of a hurt husband. It was the look of a man gazing at a stranger, a parasite. Selina, he said. His voice was not his own. It was a low, dead, hollow thing. You took money from my daughter to steal from my father, and you hit her. Graham, she whimpered, finally breaking, the tears coming. She stood and reached for him. Graham, darling, listen to me. You do not understand. I did it for us. I was protecting us. I was protecting Mira. It was for our future." "There is no us," he whispered. He looked at her, and I knew, in that moment, he was seeing her for the first time in his life. He saw the rot, the lies, the theft, the violence. He saw the woman who had turned him into a fool. He turned his back on her. He walked to the far wall, stood facing the dark tapestry, and his shoulders began to shake in a terrible, silent grief. The dominoes had not just fallen, they had shattered into dust. The silence that followed my father's collapse was absolute. It was a vacuum, heavier and more profound than any sound. Selina's desperate sobs, her frantic, "Graham, darling, listen to me," were just noise, meaningless static against the awful truth that now filled the room. My father, his back still to her, did not move. He had left the field. Grandfather Lucian, however, did not. He stepped forward into the center of the room, his authority radiating like a cold wave. "Mr. Davies," he commanded, his voice clipped and devoid of any emotion. "Please escort Mrs. Brooks and Ms. Mira Brooks to the guest cottage at the edge of the property. They will await further instructions there. Post a guard." "You cannot do this," Selina shrieked, her voice shredding. She lunged, not at my father, but at my grandfather. "This is my home. You cannot lock me out." The estate security guard who had brought in Wex moved with startling speed, intercepting her path. His arm came up, a firm, impassive barrier. "Ma'am, please, this way." "I was protecting my daughter." Selina fell back on her last, desperate defense. She turned to the room, her eyes wild, searching for any sympathetic face. "A mother protects her child. What kind of family is this? You turn on a mother for protecting her own?" "A mother," grandfather said, his voice cutting through her hysterics like a scalpel, "does not implicate her child in multiple felonies to secure a future. A mother does not assault another member of her family to provoke a reaction. Your data, Selina, has overridden your emotion." He looked at her with a final, cold dismissal. "You are done here." Selina stared at him, her mouth opening and closing. She looked at Mira, who was sitting in her chair, frozen, catatonic, her eyes wide and staring at nothing. Selina's face crumpled. She had destroyed the very person she claimed to be saving. All the fight drained out of her, leaving a hollow, defeated woman. She turned, her shoulders slumped, and allowed the guard to lead her from the locked room. Mira stood, robot-like, and followed her mother, a silent ghost in her wake. The door clicked shut behind them. The tension in the room did not dissipate, it merely transformed. The air, which had been electric with conflict, was now thick with the sterile chill of legal and financial consequences. Aunt Paige, who had been silent this entire time, made a small, strangled noise. Nolan Wex, the lawyer, was attempting to blend into the wallpaper, his face the color of old parchment. "Mr. Wex," grandfather said, his attention snapping to him, "you are suspended from all duties related to the Aurora Trust, effective immediately. Your professional misconduct, taking fees and directives from a fraudulent shell entity like Marigold Axis, will be reported to the bar. Await instructions from my new legal team." Wex, seeing his career evaporate, simply nodded, defeated. I looked at Ty. My mind was already shifting. The emotional battle was over. The structural project had just begun. "Ty, the server room." He snapped to attention. "All business." "Agreed." He looked at Mr. Davies. "We need to preserve the chain of custody. The archive room is to be physically sealed. No one in or out. I want a full, independent forensic extraction of the NVR logs and the entire financial server, every transaction log, every access file. Mr. Wex," he said, turning on the terrified lawyer, "you will surrender your laptop and all digital files related to this matter as evidence. We need the full record of your communications with Mrs. Brooks and Ms. Paige Brooks." I must consult my own counsel," Wex stammered. You are counsel, Ty countered, his voice hard. And right now, you are a co-conspirator. You can either cooperate as a witness in a federal investigation into securities fraud, or you can be a defendant. Your choice. Wex mutely unzipped his briefcase and handed his laptop to the guard. Mr. Davies, I said, I need the logs for the garage access card, the RFID key issued to Mira. Cross-reference the timestamps of her entries with the signal loss alerts from the server. Mr. Davies, already on his own device, nodded. It is already done. Ms. Brooks, they match. Perfectly. Every backup failure Mr. Bennett noted corresponds, to the second, with Ms. Mira Brooks using her card to access the archive room. It was the final, devastating piece of evidence. Mira was not just a pawn, she was the active technical agent of the conspiracy. With the immediate threat neutralized and the evidence secured, the professional tension in the room finally broke, leaving only the personal wreckage. My father finally turned around. His face was a ruin. The anger was gone. The shock was gone, replaced by a profound, bottomless shame. He walked past my grandfather, past Ty, and came to stand directly in front of me. He did not speak. He just looked at my face, his eyes fixed on the cheek I had so carefully covered with makeup, a mask that now felt obscene. Andy, he whispered. His hand, thick with a craftsman's calluses, rose, trembling. He did not dare touch my skin. He let his fingers hover an inch from my face. I saw the warnings, he choked out, his voice breaking. Years ago, you told me. You said she was dismissive. You said she was cruel. And I told you to be kinder. I told you it was just your imagination. I told you to try harder. Tears streamed down his face. I was a coward. I was so afraid of being alone. I let a monster into my house. I let her poison Mira. I let her hurt you. I let her do that to you. He grabbed me then. Not a gentle embrace, but a desperate, bone-crushing hug, as if he were holding on to keep from drowning. I am so sorry, my girl. I am so sorry. I held him. I held my father as he wept, and I realized this was the first honest moment we had shared in a decade. Grandfather watched us, his expression unreadable. He let the moment stretch, allowing the necessary grief to have its space. When my father finally stepped back, though he kept a grip on my arm as if I were an anchor, Lucian spoke. The family, he said, is wounded. It has been poisoned from within. The legal and financial implications are severe. He fixed his gaze on Aunt Paige, who flinched. Paige, you enabled this, your calls to Wex, your financial relationship with Selena. It will all be scrutinized. You will remain on this estate until the auditors are finished. He turned to the rest of us. Effective immediately. All discretionary distributions from the Aurora Trust are frozen. Uncle Cyrus let out a sharp, protesting gasp. We are compromised, Grandfather stated, ignoring him. I am bringing in an independent forensic accounting team. They will audit every transaction, every holding, every subsidiary, and every LLC, starting with Marigold Axis. He looked at Ty. Mr. Bennett, your discretion and skill have been invaluable. I would like to retain you, at your full consulting fee, as an independent advisor to the audit team. Ty nodded once. I accept. Good. Now, Grandfather said, we must restructure the current line of succession. The one that puts Selena and Mira in line to control Graham's share is void. He looked at my father, then at me. I stepped forward. The project manager in me was taking over. This was a catastrophic failure. This was a hostile takeover. This was a failing project that needed a new, robust recovery plan. Grandfather, I said, my voice clear and steady. The trust is vulnerable. It has been for years. It is built on personalities, not on systems. It needs a firewall. We cannot have a single point of failure, as we just saw. What do you propose, Andrea? He asked. His eyes were sharp, testing. I propose a temporary operating council, Effective immediately, I said. 3 seats. First, you, as the chair. Second, my father. He must now learn the business he abdicated. Third, one fully independent, external trustee, to be appointed by the new audit team, with no family ties. And what about you? He asked, a faint hint of a smile. Do you not want a seat at the table? No, I said firmly. I will not be on the council. I will not touch the money. I have a clear conflict of interest. I have my own firm to run, and I am a beneficiary. My role will be different. Go on. I will chair a new, temporary oversight and transparency committee. It will consist of myself, Mr. Bennett, and a representative from the audit team. My one and only function will be to review the auditor's findings in real time and ensure the operating council, you, Dad, and the independent, implements every single recommendation. I will not control the funds, but my committee will have final sign-off and the power to veto any transaction that is not 100% transparent. I will be the watchdog. I will hold the data. My father looked at me, stunned. Ty looked impressed. My grandfather. He smiled. It was the first time I had seen him smile with genuine warmth in 20 years. She creates a system, he said, looking at my father. She does not seize power. She distributes it. She insulates it with checks and balances. She is a builder. He turned his gaze back to me. I have been testing you, Andrea, for years. Testing me? This family, he said, his voice laced with a weary disgust, is full of people who want things. They want the money, the houses, the prestige, the titles. I have been waiting for someone who does not want things, but who wants to understand how things work. The $60,000, he continued, and my blood ran cold. I knew about it, every cent. I knew Selena was bleeding your father's accounts dry. I knew you were paying for the house. I let it happen. I wanted to see how long you would do it. I wanted to see if you would document it. I wanted to see if you would fight for the principle or just for the money. The assault, he said, his face hardening, was an unforeseen escalation, a monstrous variable, but it, too, became a test. Would you react with hysterics or with strategy? You did not run to me, crying. You went to the server room. You gathered the data. You built your case. He nodded, a deep, respectful gesture. You have proven your character. You are not just a Brooks in name. You are an architect, like I was. He looked at my father. Your proposal, Andrea, is accepted. There was one last piece of business. I looked at my grandfather, my voice quiet but inflexible. I need one more thing, I said. I will not be in the same room as her again, not without legal protection. I want a personal protection order filed tomorrow morning, a restraining order. It will be done, grandfather said instantly. Hostile contact is terminated, legally. He clapped his hands once, the sound sharp and final. Good, we are aligned. My new legal team arrives tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. The forensic auditors will be here by noon. Graham, Andrea, Ty, we will meet them in the library. He turned and walked toward the door. This is no longer a family holiday. This is a corporate restructuring. Prepare yourselves. The rest of Christmas Day was a blur of sterile, focused activity. The house, which hours before had been a stage for a toxic family drama, transformed into a corporate war room. Grandfather's new legal team, a set of 3 razor-sharp lawyers from a top Chicago firm, arrived at 10 a.m. as promised, and they were merciless. They, along with Ty, immediately began the process of forensic preservation. The auditors, a team of 4 who looked like they lived on black coffee and spreadsheets, arrived by noon and were installed in the library, which was now officially off-limits. My father spent most of the day in his study, on the phone with his own new lawyer. He looked broken, but for the first time, he also looked awake. He was no longer the passive, genial man I had always known. The cowardice he had admitted to had burned away, leaving something harder and more somber. He was grieving his marriage. but he was also facing the consequences of his willful blindness. I, along with Ty, was given an office in the West Wing. As the head of the new Oversight and Transparency Committee, a committee which, for now, consisted of just me and Ty, I was granted what my grandfather called level alpha access. It was a digital key to everything, every server, every bank account, every trust document, every LLC, every email exchange on the estate's private server. My grandfather, it turned out, was not just a rich man. He was a data hoarder. He had built his empire on the principle of trust but verify, and he had backed up everything. For 6 hours, Ty and I worked. It was like the old days in the college library, but instead of textbooks, we were navigating a labyrinth of complex financial fraud. Ty was in his element, his mind moving with a speed I found breathtaking. He was tracking the flow of money, while I was tracking the flow of information. They were smarter than I thought, Ty murmured, his eyes scanning 3 different spreadsheets. Selina wasn't just siphoning her household allowance. The auditors found it. Found what? I was building a visual timeline on the wall, using large sticky notes. Marigold Axis needed more capital than Selina could steal from the housekeeping budget. They found an anonymous bridge loan, a short-term, high-interest loan for $2 million. How did a shell company with no assets get a $2 million loan? It didn't, Ty said, his face grim. It had collateral, soft collateral. Selina, using Nolan Wex's legal framework, managed to pledge a block of non-voting shares from the Aurora Retail REIT as security. She was using the trust's own assets to borrow money to buy the trust's assets. That's insane and impossibly illegal. It is, Ty agreed. The bank that issued the loan is a small, offshore entity in the Caymans. They clearly did not care about due diligence, because they had an introducer who vouched for the transaction. Who? As if on cue, one of the junior lawyers knocked on our open door. Ms. Brooks? Mr. Bennett? We just finished the sweep of Ms. Paige Brooks's email server. She handed me a thin file. It was a series of printed emails. Paige, I read aloud, my voice flat. She was the introducer. She connected Selina with the offshore bank, and I felt sick. She got a commission, a finder's fee of $50,000, paid to her own shell company. So Aunt Paige wasn't just an accomplice, I said, sticking the email to the timeline. She was a paid co-conspirator. It gets worse, Ty said. The bridge loan was due in 90 days. The due date? January 15th. They were running out of time. They had to get control of the trust with that will amendment before the loan defaulted and the bank seized the collateral, which would have exposed the entire fraud. That is why they were so desperate at the party. It was their deadline. It all clicked into place. The escalating pressure, the desperation. The slap in the kitchen was not just an act of emotional hatred. It was the panic of a cornered thief whose timeline was collapsing. We had all the pieces. I stood back and looked at the wall. It was a clear, devastating narrative. The timeline. Theft. Selina and Mira begin siphoning funds and using the access card to cover their tracks. Conspiracy. Aunt Paige introduces Selina to the offshore bank. Marigold Axis is formed. The loan. The $2 million bridge loan is secured using trust assets as collateral. The deadline. The loan default date, January 15th, creates a hard deadline. The plot. Nolan Wex is hired to draft the incapacitation clause to seize control before the deadline. The obstacle. I am perceived as a threat to the plan. The assault. Selina, under pressure, attacks me in the kitchen, believing it is a blind spot. The panic. Grandfather's call for the 9 a.m. meeting and the delay of the will signing triggers their final desperate moves, the attempt to delete the tape and the emergency order to file the will. It was all there, a perfect, ugly story of greed and desperation. There was another knock on the door. It was Mr. Davies. Ms. Brooks, he said, his voice low. Mrs. Brooks, Selina, is at the main gate. She is demanding to speak with you. I have a restraining order being filed, I said, not looking up from the timeline. She cannot be here. She is not on the property. Ma'am, she is at the call box. She says she wishes to offer a full surrender. Those are her words. I am not. Go, a voice said from the doorway. My grandfather. He had been standing there, watching. Hear her out. A good commander always accepts the enemy's flag of surrender. It tells you what they value. I looked at Ty. He nodded. I will be right here. The comms are open. I went to the main security office, a small, dark room near the front entrance, where a bank of monitors showed every angle of the estate. I hit the button for the gate's audio feed. Selena, I said. My voice was flat, metallic over the speaker. Her voice came back, thin and cracking with static and desperation. Andrea, thank God. Please, listen to me. You cannot do this. It is already done, Selena. No, please, think of your father. Think of the name. Do you want this in the papers? Brooks' family implodes? Stepmother sued for fraud? She pleaded. It will ruin him. It will ruin the family name. You did not seem concerned about the family name when you were assaulting me, or when you were stealing from it. That was a mistake, a terrible mistake, she sobbed. I was under so much pressure. Paige, she pushed me. It was all Paige. I almost laughed. The speed with which they turned on each other was sickening. What do you want, Selena? A deal, she whispered, her voice dropping. A clean break, no charges, no audit, just a quiet separation, an allowance, a generous one, for me and for Mira. We will go away. We will go to Europe. We will sign anything you want, non-disclosures, anything. We will disappear. No one ever has to know. It will be our secret. Please, Andrea, for your father's sake. She was offering to be bought. She was offering silence for an allowance. After everything, the theft, the violence, the conspiracy, she still believed her silence had value. She thought she could trade her shame for a comfortable life. No, I said. What? No deal. Selena, this is not a negotiation. You do not have anything to bargain with. Your secret is already on a server, documented by 3 auditors and a team of lawyers. But your father? My father will survive the truth, I said, and the words felt solid, real. He will not survive another lie. You bitch, she shrieked, the mask dropping. You are just like your mother, cold, unforgiving. You are doing this to destroy me. I am not doing this to destroy you. Selena, I am doing this to fix what you broke. This is not about revenge. This is about transparency. And a transparent restructuring does not include a secret allowance for the woman who committed the fraud. I cut the feed. Her screams were cut off mid-syllable. I turned from the console, my hands steady. Grandfather was right. I knew what she valued. Her comfort, her silence, her price. And it was pathetic. I returned to the office, but as I approached, I heard a new voice from inside. Mira. She was not in the guest cottage. She was here, sitting in the chair opposite Ty's desk, twisting her hands in her lap. She looked small. She was trembling, her face pale and stained with tears. I did not know about the loan, she was whispering, her voice cracking. I swear I did not, Mom. Mom just told me we needed to secure my future. She told me Andrea was trying to take my inheritance. She told me Grandfather was failing, that he was confused, and that we had to protect him. But you signed the transfer orders, Mira, Ty said, his voice gentle but firm. The wire transfers to Marigold Axis. Your digital signature is on all of them. I signed what she told me to sign, Mira cried. Looking up, her eyes landing on me, she flinched, as if expecting me to hit her. Andrea, I did not know she was going to hurt you, I swear. I stood in the doorway, my arms crossed. You were in the server room. Mira, you used the garage card. You were disabling the system. She told me it was a game, she sobbed. The defense of a child. She said grandfather was testing us, testing me, to see if I was smart enough to access the system. She said it was a loyalty test. To her, to our family. She made me. She broke down. A full, ugly, racking sob of a terrified young woman who had just realized she was a conspirator in a federal crime. She pushed me. Mira wept. But I did it. I signed the papers. I will go to jail. Won't I? I looked at her. The smug, arrogant girl from the party was gone. This was the real Mira. Weak, terrified, and desperate for someone, anyone, to save her. What do you want, Mira? I asked. I will testify, she whispered, looking from me to Ty. I will cooperate. I have my phone. I have the texts. She told me what to do. I will give you everything. Just please, do not let her go to jail with me. I cannot be with her. That was her price. Not money, not silence. Freedom from her mother. I looked at Ty. He nodded, his face grim. He had his witness. I left them and went to find my grandfather. He was in the library, the one room he had not surrendered to the auditors. He was standing in front of a large, oil portrait of my grandmother, a woman I barely remembered, who had died when I was very young. The air in the room was thick with the smell of old paper and the silence of generations. It is done, I said, standing in the doorway. Selena offered a deal. I refused. Good, he said, not turning. Mira is cooperating. She is terrified. She is giving Ty all the text messages. She is confirming the entire timeline. She was the hand, but Selena was the brain. As I suspected, he said. He was still staring at the portrait. We have everything, I said. The bank fraud, the securities violation, the conspiracy, the assault. We have Paige. We have Wex. We have Mira. We have Selena. The pieces were all lined up. The wall in my mind was complete. The project was ready to close. He was silent for a long moment. She was a good woman, he said quietly, his gaze fixed on his wife's painted face. She believed in this family. She would have been appalled. He sighed, a deep, weary sound. She would have cut the rod out, but she would have done it cleanly. She would not have let it linger. He turned, and his eyes met mine. The weariness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard finality. The same look I had seen on his face on the terrace. The look of a judge who had passed sentence. End it tonight, he said. End it? Yes, no more audits, no more delays. We have the facts. The restructuring is now a formality. I want a final meeting, 8 p.m., in the main drawing room. Who will be there? Everyone who is left, he said. You, your father, Ty, the new legal team, and me. We will finalize the new structure. We will ratify the evidence. We will close the file. He started to walk out, then paused, as if remembering something. Oh, he said, and I have called one more guest, a final piece of business. Who? The local chief of police, my grandfather said, his voice flat. He is an old friend. He will be arriving at 8:30 to take a formal statement and to make an arrest. He walked past me, leaving me alone in the library. The air was thick, suffocating. The curtain was about to rise on the final act. 8 p.m. The main drawing room was no longer a place of family comfort. It had been converted into a boardroom, cold and formal. The heavy curtains were drawn. The large projector screen was down, and the air was sterile. I was there. My father, Graham, sat beside me, his face pale but set with a new, grim determination. My grandfather, Lucian, sat at the head of the long table, as impassive as a granite statue. Ty was present, along with the 3 new lawyers from the Chicago firm and the lead forensic auditor, a woman named Ms. Alvarez, who held a slim laptop. And there was one more man. He was in a crisp uniform. "Chief Miller," Grandfather nodded. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Lucian," the police chief replied, his voice deep and serious. "You called. You said there was a matter of assault and significant financial crime. I am here to take an official statement." The presence of the uniform sucked the last bit of air from the room. This was not a family meeting. This was a deposition. "We have prepared a summary," Grandfather said. "Ms. Alvarez, if you would." For the next 15 minutes, the auditor, in a brisk, unemotional monotone, walked us through the entire conspiracy. The screen lit up, not with family photos, but with flowcharts, the illegal wire transfers from my father's accounts, the funding of Marigold Axis LLC, the fraudulent bridge loan, the email chain from Aunt Paige, securing her $50,000 commission, the server logs, showing Mira's RFID card access, perfectly timed to the signal losses. And then, the final exhibit. "And finally," Ms. Alvarez said, "the precipitating event. Mr. Davies, please play Exhibit A." For the last time, the video from Kitchen Back 02 played on the large screen. The infrared image was huge, damning. The sound of the slap, that sharp, ugly crack, echoed in the silent room. My father flinched, but he did not look away. He watched his wife assault his daughter, and his face hardened into something I had never seen: resolve. The screen went dark. "This," Grandfather said, "is the situation, a clear, coordinated, criminal conspiracy to defraud the Aurora Trust, coupled with a physical assault." He looked at Ty. "Mr. Bennett, you have a statement to add." Ty stood, buttoning his jacket. He looked, for the first time, uncomfortable. He turned to me. "Andrea," he said, his voice quiet but clear, "I owe you an apology for my lack of transparency." I stared at him, confused. "I was not here by chance," Ty continued, addressing the room. "I did not run into Selena at a charity event. My presence at Northwood was not a coincidence. 3 months ago, Lucian hired me." A ripple of shock went through the room. My father sat bolt upright. "He hired me," Ty explained, "because he suspected someone was manipulating the subsidiary accounts and making inquiries about his will. He did not know who. He just knew the numbers were wrong. My job was to be his eyes and ears, to come here as an old family friend and simply observe." He looked back at me, his expression pained. "Andy, I had to keep you in the dark. If I had warned you, your reactions would have been different. You would have been on guard. The test would have been compromised." "The test," I repeated, my voice hollow. "Yes," Grandfather said, his voice cutting in. "The test. I had to know. Andrea, I had to know your character. I knew Ty was a financial expert, but I needed to know what you were. This family is full of emotional, greedy, blind fools. I needed to know if you were one of them, or if you were like me. I needed to know if you would choose blind, emotional revenge, or if you would choose cold, hard, structural truth." "When you showed up to that 9 a.m. meeting," Ty said, "and you led with the invoices, not the assault, you chose the data, you chose the truth. That is when I knew. And that is when I knew Lucian had his answer." I sat back, stunned. I had not just been a victim. I had been a variable in my grandfather's complex, cold-blooded experiment. "Thank you, Ty," Grandfather said. "Now for the final piece. Mr. Davies, please bring in Ms. Mira Brooks." A moment later, the door opened. Mira entered, flanked by one of the new lawyers. She was trembling, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, her eyes red. She did not look at anyone. She sat in the chair that had been placed in the center of the room. "Ms. Brooks," her new lawyer said, his voice gentle, "please tell the room, as you told me, about your mother's Plan B, should the will amendment fail." Mira took a ragged breath. We talked about it. After Mom, after she hit Andrea. She was worried. She said Andrea was smart and vindictive. What was the plan, Mira? The lawyer prompted. Mom said, Mira whispered, her voice cracking, that if Andrea tried to fight us, we would have to use her own actions against her. Be specific, Grandfather commanded. She said we would build a case, that Andrea was mentally unstable. My blood ran cold. I was supposed to testify, Mira continued, the words spilling out in a rush. I was supposed to say that Andrea was paranoid, that she was obsessed with the family finances, that she had delusions, that people were out to get her, that she was unstable, erratic. And the proof? I whispered, finding my voice. Mira looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears. Your spreadsheets, the way you were, digging into the house repairs, the fact you were trying to access the server room. Mom said we would twist it. She said we would use your evidence as proof of your paranoia. She was already talking to Mr. Wex about filing a petition, to have you declared psychologically unfit to ever be on a board, to make you invalid. My $60,000, my invoices, my investigation, my backup of the USB. Selena had planned to use every single piece of my logical, fact-based defense as proof that I was insane. She was going to use me, Mira sobbed. To say I was scared of you, that you were threatening us. It was all a lie. She made me sign the papers. She made me access the server. She's the one. That is enough, Grandfather said. We have the statement. He nodded to Mr. Davies. Bring in Mrs. Brooks. The room was silent, the air thick and toxic. A moment later, Selena was escorted in by the estate security guard. She looked defiant, her head held high, until she saw the room. She saw the police chief. She saw the lawyers. She saw the auditor. And then she saw Mira. The sight of her daughter, sitting in the witness chair, her face a mask of tears, broke Selena's composure. Mira! She shrieked. What have they done to you? What did you tell them? Mrs. Brooks, Chief Miller said, standing up, you are here to listen. It is over, Selena, Grandfather said. We have the bank fraud. We have the securities fraud. Thanks to Aunt Paige's cooperation, we have the server logs. We have the video of the assault. And now, we have your daughter's full confession, including your plot to have my granddaughter committed. Selena stared at him, her mind processing the totality of her defeat. She saw the podium. On it, gleaming under the spotlight, was my small, black USB drive, the one I had pulled from the server, the one that held the original, untampered file. In that second, she snapped, all the calculation, all the manipulation, all the cold, sharp intelligence, it vanished, replaced by a raw, primal, animalistic rage. You will not, she screamed, her voice a shredded roar. You will not ruin my daughter with your lies. She lunged, not at me, not at Mira. She lunged at the podium, at the evidence. She clawed for the USB drive, her one insane, final thought to destroy the one piece of evidence she thought mattered. She never made it. The estate security guard and Chief Miller moved as one. They intercepted her, her momentum carrying her into the chief's unmoving chest. He grabbed her arms. It was over in a second. She was restrained, her hands pinned behind her back. No, she screamed, thrashing. Let me go, it is a lie. That's not the tape. It is a lie. Chief Miller, his face grim, nodded to his deputy, who had been standing silently by the door. Document the attempted assault on an officer and the willful attempt to destroy evidence. Mrs. Brooks, you are under arrest. You cannot, Selena whimpered, all the fight gone, replaced by a sudden, cold shock. I can, Miller said, as the handcuffs clicked shut. I will need a formal statement from you, Ms. Brooks, he said to me. But for tonight, we will honor your grandfather's request for a temporary order of separation. She will be held. Get her out of here. Selina was led from the room, her sobs echoing in the hall. My father put his head in his hands. Grandfather stood. He was the only one in the room who seemed energized. "The rot," he said, "is removed. Now, we rebuild." He announced his decisions. They were not proposals. They were final. The current will structure is dissolved. The entity known as Marigold Axis LLC is being seized and liquidated by the state. All assets, including the recovered $60,000, will be returned to the trust. The files on Mr. Nolan Wex and Ms. Paige Brooks are being transferred to the district attorney's office tomorrow morning. Along with Mira's cooperating testimony, she will face consequences, but she will not be charged as a primary conspirator. He looked at my father. "Graham, your share of the trust is being reformed. You will join the executive board, and you will learn this business. Your education begins tomorrow." My father nodded, his face still in his hands. Finally, he looked at me. "The Northwood Transparency Fund is hereby established. It will oversee all distributions. As its founder, I am appointing you, Andrea Brooks, as the independent chair of its oversight committee. You will not have a salary, you will not control the money, but you will hold the veto. You will have the power to approve or deny any transaction that is not 100% transparent. You will be the watchdog. You will be the light." I met his gaze. The test was over. I had passed. "I don't need revenge, Grandfather," I said, my voice finally steady. "I just need the light." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile. He walked to the podium and picked up the small, black USB drive. Then, from his pocket, he pulled the heavy, ornate brass key, the key to the archive room. He placed them both in my hand. "From now on, Andrea," he said, his hand closing over mine. "Transparency is the law of this house. You are its architect." I closed my hand, the cool metal of the key a heavy, solid weight. The meeting was over. The lawyers and auditors filed out. My father, with a final, supportive squeeze of my shoulder, went to his own room. I was left alone in the vast, empty drawing room. I walked out, past the grand hall, and down the service corridor. I stood. For a moment, outside the auxiliary kitchen, the door was ajar. I looked into the darkness, the place of my humiliation, the place where Selina thought there were no cameras. Then I turned and walked out of the service corridor into the bright, warm light of the main hall. The snow was falling softly outside the tall windows, and in the distance, I could see the steady, blinking green lights of the server room. The house was quiet. The data was secure. And for the first time in my life, I was not a guest. I was home. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so glad I could share it with you. Where are you listening from today? I would love to know. Please leave a comment, and let's all connect and share our thoughts on this. Be sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and if you can, please support us by hitting that hype button so more people can hear and share this story.